Banana Twist, Chapter 3. Who's Got Problems? Goober got out all the syrups and nuts and marshmallow stuff, and we started to fix ourselves sundaes. He leaned over to pick up the bananas. "We could have a banana split," he suggested. Then he frowned and pursed his lips. "Unless, of course, you don't want to eat them. Maybe you just want to have them around, where you can see them, take care of them, put them in bowls of water for their baths and everything." "A banana split would be fine," I said. "I don't have a thing about bananas. I thought you did." Goober nodded seriously. "That's very understandable. We all like to think that others share our own problems." I stopped trying to straighten him out and just concentrated on making a banana split. He didn't say anything else for a few minutes. I was to find out that silences are very rare with Goober. "Raising tropical fish is my hobby," said Goober. "What's yours?" Actually, I didn't have a hobby, unless you count watching television, and nobody does, so I pretended I didn't hear him. We took our banana splits into the living room, because the kitchen was all over groceries, and the dining room table was all over books and papers and charts. The chairs and couches in the living room were covered with unopened boxes from some shop or store, so we sat on the floor. It didn't seem to be a very well-organized apartment. I wondered who lived with him, and whether it was parents or guardians. He seemed to be the guardian type. I didn't want to ask, though. I try not to ask questions, since I hate answering them so much myself. We started to eat our banana splits. "You live on this floor?" he asked. He had chocolate syrup all over his face. If there's anything I hate, it's a sloppy eater. "Not exactly," I said cautiously. Living on the same floor with this bird was going to make my life pretty hard. I'd be stuck with him all summer, and for all I knew, the rest of my life. I'd have to lie a little to keep from getting tangled up. "Not exactly," he repeated, licking his spoon. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Well, actually, it's kind of hard to explain," I said, stalling for time, and trying to think up something to say. To tell you the truth, lying comes pretty easy to me. "My father is the janitor of the building. There are 10 of us kids, and we don't have enough beds to go around, so we take turns sleeping in the elevator. It's a really nice arrangement." He started to say something. I could see his mouth opening and showing all the ice cream mushing around in there, so I hurried on. "I know what you're going to say. You're going to say that sounds monotonous, but you'd be surprised the people you meet in the elevator. And you always know what the weather is like, because everyone says something like, 'Nice day, isn't it?' Or 'Some rain we're getting,' or 'That's sure a sharp wind.' So you really learn a lot. A lot more, for instance, than if you lived in an apartment on the 14th floor. That way you don't meet anybody." "13th," said Goober, taking another bite of his banana split. "13th what?" I asked. "Floor. It's called 14th because most people are too superstitious to live on the 13th. There isn't any floor that's called the 13th. This is it, but it's named 14th. He explained all this very slowly and carefully, as if I was some little kid or something. "For instance," he went on, poking at his banana split with his spoon, "this apartment is called 1410, but it really should be called 1310. "I get it, I said. "Haven't you noticed that before?" he asked. "Spending so much time in the elevator, I would think you'd have noticed that there is no floor that is named the 13th floor. Of course, you may not be an observant person. I happen to be an unusually observant person." "Oh, I am too, usually," I said. "Usually I'm unusually observant. It's just that I'm so busy observing the people who get on and off the elevator that I don't notice anything else. Anything but their groceries, of course. I always watch for the groceries." Goober glanced over at me and then approached his banana split again. "I get to meet lots of interesting people and interesting groceries," I went on. "Like, for instance, I met you today." I kept talking so he wouldn't. "I always wait for someone to get on the elevator with a bag of groceries and hope that in the bag will be a bunch of bananas. As you've discovered, I really like to look at bananas and make sure they're safe and comfortable and happy. And they're usually on the top of the bag, so I can always see them. Now, if I liked tuna fish or something like that, it would be much more difficult because tuna fish cans are usually on the bottom. He opened his mouth to say something, but it was full of ice cream, so I talked on. I have this invention for transparent grocery bags. It would be really great for guys like me who like to see the groceries, not just wonder about what's in that brown paper bag. And could it be a can of mushroom soup or a box of Puff Puffies or what? He started to squash his banana up with the chocolate sauce and all that other stuff. That way, it's just like some goopy paste. It isn't like a banana split at all when you can see and taste and feel all the different textures. So I said, "You shouldn't mash it all up that way." Goober said, "It doesn't hurt the banana any more than chewing it, you know. Besides, I'm not convinced that bananas feel anything at all, in spite of your own convictions about it." He went out to the kitchen and came back with 2 glasses of milk. "My father will be very, very interested," he said as he handed me my milk. "He loves things like that." "Things like what?" I asked. "Oh, screwy things, you know, like having a thing for elevators or bananas. He isn't a psychiatrist himself, you understand. He's a broker, but he's very into reading about oddballs. He's got some theory about people like you. He thinks you're tuned into a different wavelength. You see things and hear things that normal people don't. That's why you all seem so odd to the rest of us." "Your father really has us figured out, huh?" I asked. "He doesn't pass judgment or anything," Goober went on. "He just observes. For instance, he wouldn't hold it against you about the bananas. He'd be interested, of course, but he wouldn't judge." Goober blinked at the mess he had made of his banana split. It looked just like mud. He ran his spoon around the side of the dish to get the last ugly drops. I didn't want to, but I started to look at his teeth. I wondered if maybe the funny color was because he ate a lot of blueberries, for example, or... "You wear braces," he said. I guess my looking at his teeth must have made him think about mine. "How long have you worn them?" he asked, staring at absorption at my mouth. "Youth," I said, through buttoned lips. "I didn't mean to ask you when you had your mouth full," he said. He waited an appropriate interval, so he could be sure I'd have swallowed, and then he said again, "How long have you worn braces?" It's a funny thing about questions. Even if you don't want to answer, you have to. It's like waiting for the second shoe to drop. It's as if there's a balance that's out of kilter. Question, answer. Question, answer. Sunrise, sunset. And unanswered questions create a kind of gap or gulp in the rhythm of things, and everything's out of joint. So I said, still keeping my lips shut, again. "Actually, I was born with braces," I went on. "I'm a wave of the future. In the future, people won't have teeth at all, just braces, because all their food will be very, very soft, maybe even just pills. Teeth will be an anachronism. An anachronism is—" "The reason I asked," he interrupted, "was the fact that you have worn braces for many years might be a very important factor in your present problems." "Who's got problems?" I asked. "I have no problems." "That's the most flagrant symptom, of course," said Goober, "thinking that you yourself have no problems. My father will be very, very interested." I pictured that his father was probably an older, taller, skinnier, uglier Goober, and I didn't want to meet him and answer his questions. "Well, I've got to go," I said. "We usually have dinner pretty early. Thanks for the banana split." I'm very good about the social amenities. My parents drilled all that into me from the time I was born, so it's a kind of automatic reflex. I don't mean that I deserve credit for it or anything, but at least I say thank you and stuff like that. "I thought you handled the whole thing about the banana splits very well," he said, "considering your hang-ups about bananas." He was pretty good about the social bit, too, I could see. He'd probably gone to a school where they taught you all that, or else he had parents, or guardians, who paid attention. He followed me out to the elevator, so that he could watch the indicator to see what floor I got off. When I got in, I pressed the button for 19, just to fool him. When I got to 19, I walked down to my own floor, 14, 13. If I judged him right, he'd go to the mailboxes in the lobby, and look at the names of the people on 19 and try to figure out which one was me. If I worked things out, I'd never have to see him again. It would take some maneuvering since we lived on the same floor, but I could do it. Mom was still fussing around in the kitchen when I got back to our apartment. She'd hung up a huge calorie chart on the wall. I noticed that one banana was 130 calories. 1/2 cup of raw cabbage was 10. "I met this really screwy kid who lives on our floor," I said, opening the refrigerator door and closing it again with a big sigh, so she'd maybe notice and feel sorry for me. "Good," said Mom. "See, it's not so hard to make friends if you try." "He is not a friend, and it isn't good, it's terrible," I said. "He's got some weird ideas. He thinks I'm weird." "That shows he's very perceptive," said Mom. "Besides, he's a very nervous person," I told her. "Who isn't?" she asked, arranging all the spoons in a drawer. "He probably watches too much television. It's bad for your nervous system." That was her way of nagging me about watching too much television. "Dinner's almost ready, so don't get started watching some program." Since I'd just had the banana split, I knew I wouldn't be able to eat. "I'm not too hungry," I said. I knew dinner was going to be something like calves, liver, and cauliflower. "Good," said Mom. "Do you want to ask your new friend over for supper? He could have your share." I sighed. "He is not a new friend. He's not anything. Just a nut who lives on this floor. I don't want to get involved with this creep. If you want to know something that's hard on your nervous system, it's this oddball." "Well, if he lives on this floor, you're bound to see a lot of him," said Mom, putting spices on the spice rack. "You might as well be friends." "No way," I said firmly. "I'm figuring out a system so I won't ever run into him again. He's a very excitable person." I wandered into the living room and turned on the television set. "Don't forget to fill out that questionnaire," called Mom. "You'd better do that before you turn on TV." There was something about my conversations with Mom that made me sigh a lot. I sighed, as if I could forget the questionnaire. I worked on it while I watched a pretty good program about some cops and robbers chase. I'd filled in all the things like name and age and height and weight, truthfully. Well, I put my weight down as a few pounds less than it was, because I was going to lose a lot of weight between now and fall, probably. "What is your favorite vacation?" Actually, my favorite vacation was 3 years ago, when my parents took one and left me at home with Mrs. Sneedley. She was the best babysitter I'd ever had. She was a television addict. We watched the morning cartoons and game shows and soap operas and afternoon movies and reruns and situation comedies and late shows. She didn't like to cook for fear she'd miss a program, so we had lots of frozen TV dinners and frozen cakes and pies. We'd eat when we felt like it, which was about all the time. Sometimes we'd have cake and ice cream first thing in the morning. Sometimes we had it 3 meals a day. Well, when my parents came back 2 weeks later, it was a real culture shock. I felt like running away to join the circus, or Mrs. Sneedley. Vacation? To me, a vacation isn't a vacation because my parents are always with me. What would be good would be a vacation from them, just for a change of scene. Well, back to the questionnaire. What is your favorite vacation? My favorite type of vacation is traveling with my family, sharing new sights, new sounds, new adventures, new insights. I like a vacation that expands my horizons, that challenges me, that broadens me, that sends me back to my regular routine with a new perspective. It had taken me 3 programs plus supper with Mom to get that far. Now I was really hungry again. Mom was taking a shower and washing her hair. I decided I'd have time to sneak out and get a candy bar, but when I opened the door, Goober was standing at the elevator. I tried 10 minutes later, and he was still there, sitting on the floor in front of it, picking his nose. Waiting for me, probably. Well, he could wait. I looked around in the kitchen cupboards, but there wasn't anything but canned salmon and stuff like that. I was really hungry for something sweet, and I was really mad at Goober for standing or sitting in my way. I wasn't going to leave the apartment while he was there. I waited and looked again. Goober was still there. I opened the door a tiny crack and watched him for a couple of minutes. Every once in a while he'd stand up and push the elevator button. The elevator would come, the doors would open, he'd peer inside, and then he'd just keep sitting there picking his nose. I'd have to forget about going out. When I went to bed, all I could think of was that creep sitting in the hall, keeping me from my candy.